Have you noticed lately how everyone seems to miss the past and is feeling a little nostalgic? And I don't even think people miss the past the way they think they do. Because what people really miss is who they were when they were actually in that era. Sort of like when life felt a little bit more simpler and it felt kind of safe. And one thing you have to understand is that nostalgia shows up when people feel uncertain about the future and they don't know what's going to happen. Because honestly, the world is changing so fast, faster than what most people can even process right now. And when things in life feel uncertain, the brain is naturally going to look for something that feels familiar and is going to feel safe. And if you're not aware of it, being nostalgic will slowly turn into being resentful towards the now, towards the present, and you'll be holding on to this fear of the future and you're going to find it hard to move forward in life. But once you understand what nostalgia is actually doing, it's going to change how you view the past and it's going to change how you view the present. So by the end of this video, you're going to know how to use those insights so that way you know how to move forward into the future without getting stuck always looking at the past. So let's dive in. Now, if you're new here, welcome to Shh and Listen because baby, it is noisy everywhere. And over here, we have real intimate conversations. Call it pillow talks, where we talk about what's going on in the world, whether it be politics, world news, trends, documentaries, pop culture. So that way you understand what's going on in you and you can use that to transform and be better. Now, today's topic is all about why in the world people are so fixated on always reminiscing about the past. And it's been a huge trend lately. And we've seen it come up even from fashion. Like right now, like there's 90s fashion is in from low-rise jeans to crop tops to platform sneakers. You see it come up even with like TV shows. Like there's a lot of reboots going on right now. You have Bel Air. You have The Devil Wears Prada that's going to be premiering in the summer. You have Lion King, Sex in the City, Coming to America, The Color Purple. And there's probably so many other more shows and TV shows that are still in the writing blocks right now that hasn't been approved, but you're seeing it come up in fashion, in entertainment, and also in relationships too. Like, have you noticed people are starting to struggle the block as well? Like, we've seen it happening with Nelly and Ashanti. They had a baby. We saw it happen to J-Lo and Ben Affleck, but they didn't work out, and also Remy Ma and Papoose. So people are spinning the blocks in their love life as well and revisiting past relationships, seeing if it's gonna work now years later. And then you also see it come up in social media trends. Like, we're in 2026 right now. I remember at the start of the year in January, there was this 2016 trend where people were using filters from then and doing makeup tutorials from how they used to do in 2016 and doing dances and all these things and just reliving like how things have changed the past decade. And that trend alone, I was reading an article about it and they said Spotify saw a 790% increase in 2016 themed playlists in January of 2026 alone. TikTok searches for 2016 surged 452% in the first week of the year, and over 56 million videos created with 2016 era filter. So there was a demand in it that just came out all of a sudden. And even with technology too, like people, like companies like maybe Samsung, Apple, Nokia starting to revisit flip phones. Because I thought we discontinued that a long time ago, but apparently they want to bring it back. But let's not get into that. That's a topic for another day. So when you factor all these in, it makes you wonder, why are we seeing such a rise in this? Could it be that, people are running out of creative ideas and they're trying to profit off of something that works? Almost like, why take a risk on something brand new when you can make money off of something that you know is going to yield to a return? Because now you're seeing Hollywood and corporate brands, they're starting to find ways to de-risk their investments. And it's almost like better for them working with familiar intellectual property, knowing that they're going to gain some type of money about it. Because one thing you got to understand is like when you're trying to greenlit new projects, it requires a lot more money and a lot more marketing spend to try and gain a new audience. But when you're doing something that's from the past, that's a reboot, it's kind of like easier and you're building off of what was already there. So it makes it a little bit easier to profit from that. That could be one way to look at it. Or another thing to consider is there's this 10, 20, or 30-year cycle when it comes to the stuff where you see a generation, they gain cultural and economic access and power. So now they're the ones in the decision tables. They're the ones calling the shots. And right now you see millennials that are in their 30s and 40s. They're in spaces like tech, in media, and corporate spaces making these decisions. If you look at previous generations, they may have had access to that power, but they didn't have a direct like pipeline to the culture. And then now when you look at media and streaming, it kind of changed the whole game on that, where you can now bypass the gatekeepers who might have said, no, that project is not going to work, or no, that's not going to resonate with the current audience. So nostalgia comes back because people who grew up in it finally has the keys to power. And that's another way you can look at it. But when you really like sit down and you really deep it for a minute, a lot of this stuff is very emotionally driven and is deep rooted too, because nostalgia shows up when people feel uncertain about the future. Like right now, we are witnessing a potential WW3 right here. We're seeing a rise in food cost, corrupt politicians and celebrities, AI potentially taking over jobs, a lonely generation where people are toxic and nobody wants to date as much as they used to. There's a debt crisis. There's inflation we have to worry about. Cultural instability. People can't afford housing like they used to. People are literally doom scrolling on social media. People are affected by the negative trends they see on social media. There's climate change. There's this fear of the public post-COVID. And there's so much more stuff that's going on that I can't even keep up, and I can't come here to list all of them. And when you're considering all these things, and when the future feels unstable, it makes sense why people emotionally retreat into the past, because the past feels predictable, the present feels chaotic, and the future feels unknown. So you see how nostalgia is used as this powerful emotional trigger, when people feel anxious, or they feel sad, or they feel depressed, and they're using it as a way to self-regulate themselves. Because all the mind is trying to do is to look at something that feels familiar and safe, and is trying to find that in past events. And you can see this happen in the world of politics, right? Like, look at what's going on in the US with the man in the White House currently, and the whole Israel and Iran. You see how people are now starting to look at past presidents, and for example Obama, and really appreciate how, okay, yeah, things weren't perfect then either, but at least it didn't feel as chaotic as things feels right now. So nostalgia spikes when there's some type of national crisis and political unrest as well. So it makes you look at past leaders and past presidents and go like, wow, at least they didn't lead us into chaos. And they weren't that bad after all, compared to what we have right now. And it helps you remember when life felt a little bit more simpler, a little bit more coherent, and it felt meaningful somewhat. So the nostalgia sort of gave like a shortcut to meaning for some people. And you also see it happen in relationships as well. Like, have you ever noticed when somebody leaves like a real toxic relationship and you go through like this heartbreak, all of a sudden when you start thinking and reminiscing about the relationship, all you remember is just the blissful moments. You remember all the great things about the person. And you magically forget about all the toxic mess that you just left, which is what caused the breakup and is causing the heartbreak to begin with. So we remember the safety, but not the complexities that happened in the past when that was going on. So in general, the past and what people remember is not even like the full truth. It ends up being like this edited, watered down version of what really happened, because your brain is trying to protect your emotional well-being. So it does that by buffering all the mess, all the toxicness, and just focusing on the blissful moments, almost like a psychological immune response. And we low-key know this, but we still retreat into that edited past, not because it was perfect, but because it was complete, because the story finished. So because we know how that story ends, it somewhat brings comfort when you don't know what's going on in the world and there's a lot of uncertainty out there. But the problem is that if we forget that the past has been edited and it's not the full picture of what really happened, and you're neglecting that, you start making decisions off of what was low-key a fantasy that you created. And that doesn't just happen in relationships and cultures. You also see it happen in business and in success stories. And I the one thing that comes to mind is 50 Cent. Like, I don't know if you guys read his book. It's called Hustle Smarter or Hustle Harder. I'm gonna post a picture of this. But I'm gonna get to the steps and what to do to help you in a minute. But I just really want to highlight this chapter in this book. It was chapter 5, called Evolve or Die. And this is where 50 Cent, he talks about how him and his friend, they both grew up in the same era of music. They were both trying to become an up and coming star. Now his friend was really popping in the 90s, like he was the hit star. But what happened was, when there was this shift with CDs transitioning into more digital music, 50 saw where that trend was going, and he was able to pivot to match that wave. But with his friend was still stuck in that era where CDs was king, where selling physical albums was the winning strategy, because that was the environment in the 90s where people made their careers and they built money off of going platinum and being, the number one record on the charts. But with the technology changing, the rules were also changing as well. So instead of trying to adapt to more streaming and digital platforms, his friend was still trying to push out his CDs. He was still trying to operate in the same old playbook. He was still stuck in that CD distribution era. And that attachment his friend had to his heydays in the past ended up being the exact same thing that kept him stuck from being successful in the future. Because what once created success before is not going to be the same thing if the environment evolves and changes around you. Now, for 50 Cent, right? He was able to evolve. You see him turn from rapper to actor to TV producer to entrepreneur to author. Like, he's been able to do so many things because he understood that he literally had to evolve to survive or die. But unfortunately, his friend wasn't able to do that and ended up being stuck in a past that no longer exists anymore. And that's the thing with nostalgia. It's comfortable because it reminds us of a time when things felt more predictable and stable. But if you're clinging onto it for too long, you start to lose some type of direction in where you're headed. Because as I mentioned earlier, people don't miss the past like they think they do. They miss who they were in that past. So for 50 Cent, whose friend was stuck in his heydays back in the 90s, he was failing to see the trends that was happening in the music industry at that time. And for you watching, you have to realize that life is a series of events. There's things always changing. People, win jobs, they lose jobs, they move to new cities, they make up, they break up, they lose money, they gain money, they graduate, they evolve. But with each transition, it's easy to feel like, you're losing pieces and parts of yourself. So you have all these layers of nostalgia that impacts you. You have to look at it from an emotional standpoint because it comforts you, but it's also going to keep you stuck. You look at it mentally as well, where it distorts your memory and makes things feel better than what it really was. There's also a behavioral element where it makes you avoid the present and makes you a lot more resistant to change. And then you see how it affects your decision making, where you're making decisions based on a fantasy and not really what happened. And it also affects your identity because you're getting attached to who you used to be instead of who you're evolving to be. And this is all because you want some type of control in a changing world. And I'm gonna say it again. You want some type of control in a changing world. And I get it. It's a strong desire to have. It's a very human. It's a human nature to want to have some type of sense of control. But the problem is, if you don't understand why you're stuck, you're gonna keep being stuck. And if you have insight with no action, there is no point. It's useless. So let's actually do something about it. So one of the first things that's gonna help you is that you need to do and conduct a memory audit. Since nostalgia literally edits out the mess, you really have to force yourself to write down what was the actual reality of that situation? Like, what really happened? Because if you don't have the full picture, it ends up being a fake past that didn't actually exist, or a diluted version of the past. So take one memory, one, situation that you've been reminiscing about, and write down two columns. The left side being what you miss in the situation, and the right side being what are you actually editing out. So for example, what you miss could be the safety, the freedom, the excitement, and what you're editing out is the stress or the limitations or the setbacks you felt. Then you got to be honest and ask yourself, where if all the messy stuff came with it, would you still want to go back to that past memory? Would you still want to sign up for it all over again? So for example, that relationship that was low-key toxic that you keep reminiscing about, do you miss it in your current life because it's dry and it's boring, and that relationship brought you thrill and excitement, and you miss the hot crazy sex? Like, those are things you got to think about, and you have to realize, like, what thing can you do currently, like in your current life, where you can rediscover that same level of thrill and excitement, but in a new healthy path moving forward. And why this is so powerful to do is that you force your brain to stop doing what it loves to do, which is to buffer out the rough parts and only leaving you to like a highlight reel to focus on. And it helps you, brings you back to what actually happened. Now, once you've conducted this memory audit, now what you have to do is extract the feeling and not the era. So when we think about an era, sometimes we don't actually miss that old job, that old city, that old friendship. And people could spend a lifetime chasing that thing, chasing those material possessions, the vanity of it all, but not realizing that what we really want and what we crave is the feeling those things gave us, whether it be joy or the feeling of calm, or feeling content, feeling purposeful, having things simple. So when you catch yourself longing for something in the past, you almost have to ask, like, what was that feeling I had then? And then ask yourself, like, where in my life right now can I experience that exact same feeling, even if it's gonna look slightly different or maybe not as intense, but where can I start feeling that little by little every day? And hell, I can give you an example about this. Like, the other day I was reminiscing. So I graduated from university years ago. So I was thinking back to like that era and how I was missing some parts of it. Now, I didn't miss studying late at night, pulling all-nighters, writing exams, but what I really missed was the friendships, like how easy it was to plan things with people, how easy it was to make new connections. Like, everybody was going through a similar shared experience because maybe we were in the same program or we lived close by. So there was proximity there because we were all physically close. There was, we saw each other frequently. So the frequency was there. How long we spent with each time, with each visit or each, planned activity, it was often like several hours. So the duration was high, and it was intense as well because, again, we were all going through, sometimes it can be trauma bonding. Let's say we're all going through heartbreak or we failed an exam or whatever it may be. There was this shared experience that intensified the emotions and the feelings and allowed us all to connect. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm just missing that closeness with that community. So I was like, why not plan to have like deep conversations with, friends that I miss, like at least like once a week or once every 2 weeks, for example. So that's just one way of like looking at the past, taking that feeling and figuring out how you can apply it in your actual life, regardless of how busy you are. Or because, when you're working and you're handling business or whatever creative project, like, you sometimes lose that a little bit. So figuring out how you can still maintain that is key. And why this works is because eras eras come and go, but that feeling you have is always portable. So in a world that's always changing, the only thing you can really control is how you feel towards it. And if you're not managing your feelings, it's gonna end up managing you and controlling you at the end of the day. So now, once you've conducted a mental audit and you've extracted the feeling and not the era, you then have to create a future resume and test it on current decisions. The thing is, most people build their identity from what they've been through, which kind of locks you in a way, because you look at what you've gone through and you view that as if it's your only story. And nostalgia is going to trick you into thinking that the past was the only time when things actually worked. And you're not realizing that you can always reinvent yourself and evolve by projecting forward. And the best way to visually do this is thinking and embodying the sort of qualities you want to embody right now, that is going to resemble what you're aiming to be in the next 10 years. So, not so much thinking about the goals, but more so the qualities. So, for example, do you want to be the type of person that's going to embrace change instead of resist it? Do you want to be the type of person that's going to be curious about what happens next instead of protective about what was? You want to be the type of person that's going to make decisions based on reality and not some type of diluted fantasy in your head. So these qualities that you're thinking about, let it almost sort of be like your compass and that North Star that you're trying to head towards. So when you're facing a decision, you start thinking about, in the next 10 years, will I be glad that I made that change? Or would I be stuck and wish that you would have adapted sooner? And what this does is that it allows you to stop identifying on who you were in the past, and it's going to help you orient your way forward. And it also allows you to take some of that emotional weight off of what you're currently going through now. So instead of looking at the current pressures and the current, stress, you start looking at things from that future lens and see yourself as that version of you that eventually grows from it instead of staying stuck behind. So now, once you've conducted that memory audit, you've extrapolated that feeling you had and you're applying it in your life, you're looking at that version of yourself 10 years from now and you're using that to make decisions today. You then want to focus on building micro adaptations. Now, I get it, because when you look at change can feel really scary because you don't know what to expect. Some of us don't like it because it feels threatening, and your brain is automatically going to resist it because it's trying to fight for some type of control there. And when change happens, some people make the mistake of doing a complete 180 switch. Like, for example, if you're trying to lose weight, some people will all of a sudden start dieting intensely and exercising and not really taking the time to do that foundational work and that mental shift and preparation to help maintain your results. So it's no wonder why they end up doing a yo-yo diet and they end up reverting back into gaining the weight after that process, because it's easy to revert to old habits, which is why it's important to make small, minute, micro changes every day, so that way you're doing something that feels sustainable and the result is going to last longer because it's easier to manage. So, for example, you can pick one area in your life right now where you feel like you're stuck on an old mindset, whether it be technology or your career or how you approach dating, a relationship pattern, and you commit to making one small behavioral change that week. So, for example, right, if you're stuck in old industry methods, commit to reading articles about emerging trends in your space. Think about what skills made you successful then that you can now apply in today's emerging world. Or if you're stuck thinking about your ex, think about doing one social activity this week solo and just connect with new people if you're ready for it. Or if you're stuck on the way things used to be in your city, try exploring a new city and getting lost in it and just seeing what's out there. Remember that when you're in motion and you're constantly moving, that is the best way to be motivation every time. That's going to be motivation because you're in motion and there's momentum building. So those small, tiny wins, it then signals to your brain that, yes, this change is different. It's not dangerous, but it's just different, and that's okay. And once you make those small adaptations, you're going to look back one day and be like, wow, I changed. You can think about, even for me personally, I think about just being 1% better today than I was yesterday. So 1% at the start of the year to the end of the year, that's 365% growth, which is a lot. So you're literally looking back at a whole different person at the end of the year. So it's something small like that, but when you let it compound with time, you're gonna see the changes and people won't even be able to recognize you. So now when you really step back and you look at everything, nostalgia was never really about the past. It was always about trying to feel safe in a world that no longer feels predictable anymore. Trying to find some type of control. And there's nothing wrong with that, like I said. Your mind's just trying to protect you. But you can't build your future by constantly looking at the safety of something that's already been finished in the past. Because it may feel good because you know how the story ends, but your life right now is still being written. It's still ongoing. So moving forward means seeing things clearly, unedited, as I mentioned earlier, seeing things clearly and really being able to gauge the current reality of things, extracting what serves you and applying that feeling in the now. Then, translating that in today's language, in today's new environment, so it doesn't hold you back. And then finally, letting go of the rest that no longer serves you because there's no use of carrying that baggage anymore. Because when you really think about it, like your life doesn't move forward based on what feels familiar. It moves forward based on how you're willing to adapt to the changes that are happening. And are you open and willing to accept it? So take this insight, use it, and build something new instead of trying to relive something that's already been done. Now, let me know in the comment section below what's been holding you back? What have you been reminiscing about? And what do you need to move forward from so that way it doesn't keep you stuck anymore? And also, if you like more intimate conversations like this, more pillow talks, that's what shh and listen is all about. So that way we can tune off the outside noise and we can really come in and figure out ways that we can all grow together and be better. So if that sounds like your vibe, this next video is just for you. Until next time.